because the media is so controlled by the same group, by the same Zionist group. I mean, a good example is the six biggest media corporations in the world. Five biggest, are AT&T under Stanky, who's a Zionist, and you got. Yeah. I mean, you can keep going. Comcast, which is the MSNBC, and all those things. That's by another Jew by the name of Roberts, but his real name is Mirtsky, right? His ancestry. And then we can just keep going on down the line. We got Alphabet. We got Google, controls 80% of the search engines on planet Earth, which means they can send you to whatever websites they want to send you to and censor or suppress the websites or the opinions or the political figures that they don't like.
And they work alongside ADL to do that.
They work with the ADL. They do. In fact, more than that, though, Google shares billions of dollars of contracts with the Israeli Mossad and the Israeli government.
Yeah, I was unaware of that.
It's a fact. In fact, it's really interesting. The three top leaders of Google are Sergey Brin, Larry Page, and Eric Schmidt, the biggest owners of Page and
those are the founders,
Brin. But the thing is, it's just fascinating to think that they have this alliance with Israel, and that's like a protective move. They control. Of the 8 billion people in the world, they kind of reach about 6 billion people. And they also control Wikipedia. Now, the head of Wikipedia, the guy that founded it, went to Israel and got the Bar-Ilan Prize from Tel Aviv University of, the great person, for Wikipedia. Yeah. And he said he identifies as a Jewish person who supports Israel, is a Zionist. Yeah. Now, he said he was not going to be biased. He was going to make sure Wikipedia wasn't biased, but
that's
Wikipedia is biased.
Yeah, it is biased. So you're saying all five of the biggest conglomerates are all ran by Zionists? Because I did that myself. I remember one day I went down the rabbit hole of looking down the conservative media, and I saw it was all ran by Jewish Zionists, not just Jewish people. It was all Jewish Zionists.
And we're not allowed to notice this, right? And I don't think that's racist or anti-Semitic to notice. It's like this. We have a lot of criticism. But people are learning today that the New York Times is lying to us about a lot of things. They lied. They had this big article about how there was systematic rape of Jewish women on October 7. And it had a big picture of a family on the cover and systematic rape. This was written by people who wrote the article, part of the Jewish intelligence networks, right? Oh, and these were all Jewish writers. And the New York Times it's run by 5 people. And each of them, these are what's called Class B stockholders, originally the Schultzberger family and related to them. And they're all Jewish Zionists. It's like who support the state of Israel and support what they call the Jewish agenda. And again, they have a right to do that. Yeah. But why didn't the New York Times come with a warning label, right?
It's like, a lot of people are literally Mossad.
Yeah, if they were having articles, say, on the oil industry or the corruption of some politicians like Enron, with the oil industry, and the New York Times was owned by oil industry executives, that would be the first thing mentioned.
Yeah,
right.
Or let's just say even if it was Palestinians that owned all of our news.
Well, exactly.
If it was all Palestinians on the New York Times, CNN, all these different things, the Daily Wire, it would give a different slant, and we should know that there's biased news. People are going to have their biases no matter what, and to have these.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like to act like there's not going to be bias is insane. And just the fact, like I said, I don't know all these big clamors like you're saying, but I remember one day I went down the rabbit hole of looking up the conservative media, like the Daily Wire, PragerU. It was a bunch of them I looked through, and every single one of them was Zionist Jews. And that was a shock to me. I haven't done liberal media, but liberal media is just as bad, it sounds like.
Well, I think the media is very much controlled. And when we've seen that going on at Gaza, and we can just take October 7 as an example, if we want to just jump into Gaza right now for a moment.
Go ahead.
All right. So October 7 is presented to us like this proved the barbarity and the animalism or whatever of the people of Gaza and the terrorism and so forth. But then you look at the facts, and I believe in empiricism as an idea, and what the idea of an empirical discussion, scientific or historic, is about finding the facts on the ground, right? So they treat October 7 as like just like something out of a vacuum. Well, in the last 10, 15 years, over 7,000 Palestinians, mainly women and children, 70%, have been murdered by the Israeli army, bombs, children. In fact, and since that time in Gaza, for instance, they just did a study for the United Nations, and they said that the biggest single demographic group of people dying in Gaza are children between the ages of 6 years old and 10 years old. That is the biggest single demographic group of deaths and maimed people in Gaza, right?
Yeah, and they say they're killing Hamas, but it's absolute bullshit.
So on October 7th, we had the entire media of the world share, and it's still being repeated, that the people in Gaza, the people who had the prison camp breakout, because that's all Gaza is, that they were beheading children, and they beheaded 40 babies. In fact, you can see the video. It's this amazing thing to watch with this newscaster saying the military person, and it turned out to be a complete lie.
They still repeat it, though. They repeat it over and over, including
it's still repeated by people all the time. It's just
they should take these lies and repeat them over and over until it becomes true.
So when I first noticed this, so I said, what is the, how many of the allegedly 1,400, then it became 1,200, now they're saying 1,150 died. But how many of them who were killed were children under the age of 18? And by the way, 17, 18, you can still serve in the military. So how many of them were children that these people killed? Well, the Israeli government, and I get this from Ynet News, big giant headline, 36 children died in Gaza on October 7. Now you compare that to 40 to 50% of the people that died. I'm talking about in previous Jewish raids, and that's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children. Not 36, but 550.
So it's still terrible that they killed 36 children, but it shows Israel comes in. They come in and intentionally kill children, and the Gazans or the Palestinians were trying not to kill children. They're attacking military targets and.
In fact, they actually they overcame 2 military bases. They were a lot more military oriented than what.
They were military, and they were trying to get hostages to trade back.
Yeah, and that's another good example. Okay, so that's the first thing. So the whole beheading of babies was a lie. The big New York Times article about systemic rape to try to, and also one thing the media does is, we were talking earlier about, they divide people. They try to get men and women fighting one another and dividing them.
Black versus white, men versus women.
They try to get certain people who have sexual orientation of a different way, to see them separately, and then try to pigeonhole them. Not to identify with their greater cause for their own people. They do this constantly, and it's like this is the modus operandi that they operate. They divide everybody up in these groups, and then they are able to concentrate on those groups to separate them from their greater interests as a whole. Now, if you look at Gaza, again, let's just start with the children, because so 40 beheaded babies is a lie. There were no babies that were put in ovens, evoking the Holocaust and that emotion that comes from that. And so that's the first lie. All right, the next lie was now the systematic rape, as I said, the New York Times article. It was written by Jews in the Jewish New York Times, right? And the pictures they show of the family, right? The parents of the woman that died, right, say their daughter was not raped.
Dang.
I mean, that's the headline in the picture, because it was phony.